of Directors. And I will be calling the Tuesday, January 18th, 2022 regular meeting of the Board of Directors to order. It is 6:31 p.m. Unless it's otherwise noted, all items on the agenda are subject to action by the Board of Directors. Time-specific items are also noted on the agenda. So as you'll see this evening, we do have a few no action required items that are for a time certain. And so we'll get right into those. First, we'll do a roll call vote to determine a quorum. So for board members who are here, please state your name and that you're present.
Sequoia Falk, present.
Dave Janetta, present.
John Broderick, present.
Thank you, Meg Ryan, present, as we know. That is a quorum, so we'll move on. Are there any modifications to this evening's agenda?
No modifications.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll move forward with the agenda as presented. First item is AB 361, resolution 2022.01. This resolution is allows the board to continue teleconferencing for meetings in accordance with the Brown Act and state regulations by proclaiming that the a local emergency regarding COVID still exists, ratifying the state of emergency and authorizing the remote teleconference meetings from a period of January 18th, 2022 to February 15th, 2022. And I think on this item, just looking for a move to approve in a second on the resolution.
I move to approve the resolution AB 361.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you.
2022-01.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Motion carries 4-1. Thank you, and we will continue holding these meetings remote to the near future. So with that said, a couple minutes early, but I think it would be, is it Chris? I guess I'll ask you. We have time certain for 6:35. We're at 6:33.
I think we can go forward.
Okay, that sounds good. Our first three items on the agenda this evening are presentation items. Starting at 6:35, we have Julie Peterson here to talk about a local project nearby, and I'll leave that. Any further introduction to Chris or Julie to take from here? Thanks.
I think Julia can take it from here. Julie, I'm not going to put your flyer in the background because you have it in your background unless you want me to, and I have a street view I can place so people can be familiar with the area that we're talking about.
I've brought a short PowerPoint presentation with pictures if I can share the screen.
Sure.
And we may want to look at yours as well, Chris, but I tend to bring up. Is there a way that I can share the screen? It says it's disabled.
It should be enabled now. Can you try that?
There you go. Now you should be seeing my screen. And it looks like I'm also seeing Chris's screen.
Yeah, you're both sharing. Chris, you can stop yours, or you can up at the top under view options, you can pick which screen that you want to look at.
Oh, well, it's fine to look at both if that works for you guys. I just kind of put together a presentation to walk you through. So I'm Julia Peterson. I'm Caltrans Clean California Coordinator, and I'm the program manager for Clean California for Caltrans. So I manage all of the various aspects of this program. And today I'm here to talk about the Vance Avenue parking space that we're probably, or maybe I should call it the infamous Vance Avenue parking space. So Clean California was designed by Governor Newsom to be a transformative initiative to beautify, create jobs, and remove litter. And we at District 1 felt that the Vance Avenue Parklet was an opportunity. It won't be a lot of jobs, but it'll definitely beautify and remove litter. There seemed to be a good opportunity for that. So what we're looking for in our beautification projects is a cultural shift towards shared responsibility and community pride. So we're trying to help places to be beautiful, as well as to help create that cultural shift so that people will maintain them in their new and beautiful state, as opposed to some of the current states. So just to give you an idea, for Clean California, it is divided up roughly evenly. Caltrans has quite a bit of money to clean up litter on the roads and highways. This money here is the local grant program. And then this is Clean California's beautification projects. So there's often a little misconception, or we'll call it confusion, between, Caltrans funding right here for the Caltrans beautification and local grant programs. And they're two different funding sources. So today we're going to talk about the Caltrans funded beautification projects. These projects have already been funded, so that's one of the differences between this and a local grant. And when District 1 submitted our projects for approval, we gave priority, as does all of Clean California, to historically disadvantaged communities. And Manila qualifies as a low-income community, as you probably are aware. So we're looking to bring some transformational beauty to some of our local areas. So that's where Vance Avenue is funded out of this portion. And so that's the picture I brought as the before picture. We got that on social media. This is the truck tied to the do not litter here sign, or no dumping sign. And this guy's holding it up so they can pull that out. You guys have probably seen that stuff more than I have. But this is what we explained to headquarters as one of the current states. And what I'm here today for is, hopefully we do not want that to continue, but we want to identify the stakeholders in the Manila community, get some input on what we're going to do. I have plans of what we want to do, but we really, Clean California is by the people and for the people. And so we want to know what the Manila community wants us to do for this parklet. And we would like some assistance with local art. So we can do art, but we want to talk about that. So let me go through what we're thinking we're going to do, and then I'm going to want to hear from you. So the goal for Vance Avenue is to prevent illegal dumping. It's been a chronic problem. You guys probably know even better than I do. And what we want to do is turn that big paved area into a parklet. It'll beautify the area, it'll increase viewing, it'll have more people in that location. So we'll replace the parking, put some native plants in, picnic benches. We'll leave some parking spots, but you won't be able to drive deep into the parking, the area that's paved now, and leave your trash. So this is our earliest concept of the design, and this was sent to headquarters and has been approved and has been funded. These are preliminary concepts, so we will be making some adjustments. What we propose is to remove all of the pavement here in green, do some native plantings along the outside of everything. This shows one picnic bench, and that was going to be an interpretive sign. However, the Coastal Commission decided that a coastal development permit would be needed for an interpretive sign. So we've dropped the sign. There won't be time to get that done before this project happens. So, and this sort of shows you would still be able to park here. We will actually stripe these. It doesn't show, but we're talking about striping them. And then here's another overview, shows a little bit more. We've moved up from having benches and an interpretive sign to thinking that 2 picnic tables might be the right way to go. We're thinking big concrete ones, they're pretty hard to remove. And just turning this into a nice parking area or parklet. So this summary sheet just gives you an overall view. So that's what I'm here to ask for tonight, is for community input on this project. Meg, you look like you're maybe speaking.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Does that conclude your presentation, or at least for now? Because what I would like to do is see if the board has any questions for you, and then open it to public comment. So that would also allow the board, other people in attendance at the meeting to provide comment as well.
Absolutely. I've got my paper here. I'm ready to write down comments. I'm also interested in how other ways to engage with the community. I should have explained early on the timeline for this project. So typically Caltrans projects take a long time. This project was approved in December. It will be designed, it's being designed now and will be designed over the next 6 weeks. And by spring, it should be ready to install. And by next summer, there should be a parklet being installed. So this is a really fast turnaround time. It would surprise me if it's not there by late summer. This particular project will not go out to bid. Our maintenance forces will be doing it. So it will probably depend a little on the storm weather and season and things like that. But we're going to make this happen really fast. And for that reason, we need a lot of input. So
sure. Great. Well, thank you. It's nice to hear projects moving fast.
You will have a parklet. A year from now, you can sit in your parklet. Yeah, assuming that we don't hear from the community that they don't. And I will say this project originated with a community idea. So there had been dumping, and boy, I don't remember which community member I was told it was. They didn't contact me, but they contacted my boss, said, I know exactly what you need to do here at Vance, and explained this concept. And then Clean California came along and could actually fund that concept. So we're doing something that was brought to us by the community as a potential way to remediate the trash and to prevent future trash.
Thank you. Appreciate that background. Did any of the board members have questions for Julia at this time? Sequoia, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much. This is awesome to see this happening there. I think it'll be a good spot for bird watching and things like that. I would imagine that would be probably one of the main uses. I'm curious if built into the grant, there's funding for like long-term maintenance, or how that works. Like if there's going to be a grass area, how is that going to be maintained? Is that the district's responsibility as soon as it's put in, or is that something that's there is funding for? I guess that's my only real question. The design looks good to me. I think, like I said, just having places people can sit with their binoculars and things like that seems like the most likely use. And I guess there's not going to be any sort of restroom facilities or anything like that. So that could, I guess, yeah. So definitely wouldn't be a place for like a family or someone to be on a road trip and use as a rest stop or anything like that. So to me, it seems like the most likely use would be wildlife watching type activities, or maybe a local family going for a picnic or something. But yeah, just curious about the maintenance and that sort of stuff, whose responsibility that is, and if there's funding for that.
When you say, is there funding, do you mean, is there funding for the Community Services District, or?
Just once this park is installed, is that the extent of Caltrans operation? Is we're going to create this park and we're going to, paint the lines and do the benches and things like that, and then we're out, and then it's just district is going to take it from there? Is that the plan?
Does the Community Service District want to have a maintenance agreement to do that? At least through Clean California, we might be able to pay the district to do the maintenance there.
I'm not, that would be something more maybe that Chris could speak to. I would imagine it wouldn't be something we were necessarily interested in. I just was wondering if it's something that is just going to be maintained. The intention is for it to be maintained by Caltrans indefinitely.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
This
we
is
basically
it's a Caltrans facility.
Excellent. So, well, that's
Yes.
great then. We get I guess, Chris, you could speak if there's any reason the district would be interested to get that contract, but I'm imagining that just having Caltrans do it sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that sounds best.
We actually have maintenance agreement funding through Clean California to pay for litter abatement. So if your community service district was able to clean up, litter in anywhere along the state, or the advantage of the Clean California maintenance agreement is it includes adjacent to or visible from the Caltrans right of way, where traditionally we've only cleaned up our right of way. Now you can also clean up the stuff you can see from the right of way, and we'll reimburse actual costs to do so. And so
Nice.
I'm happy. There are many aspects of Clean California, and tonight I didn't reserve time to talk about the other aspects. If you'd like to learn more, I'm happy to work with Chris and come back and present about those things, but this would be maintained. We are considering making it an adopt a highway site. So that would mean that it could be adopted by any people in the community or group who wanted to. And the stipend for cleaning it up, I believe it would qualify for $250 per quarter for cleaning it up. It would still be just like the state roads, where adopt a highway volunteers pick things up. They get a sign and they do pick up litter, but the state still maintains it. So it's not like adopt a highway is expected to take over, but they would maybe give it a little extra attention. So it likely will be an adopt a highway site. If someone is particularly interested in it, then we could definitely turn it into an adopt a highway site.
Excellent. Thank you so much. That very much answers all my questions.
Yes. I think if your question was, are we as a community trading an area of parking lot that's an attractive nuisance for a nice new parklet? Yes, we hope that that's what's happening.
Yeah, and I think perhaps just clarification, that's my understanding, it's not district owned property. So that's where we do not have we don't have to say mow the lawn and empty the trash.
I believe it is on state right of way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
that's kind of the distinction and the responsibility part of it, of who's kind of maintained long term.
I'm going to double check on that. So, but that is my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's either state owned, or there may be some underlying private ownership, but I don't believe that it's district owned property.
Yeah.
On that, Dave, so you got your hand raised.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Julia, for being here. This is great. Super exciting, as I often run past there, and all kinds of characters. It's kind of great people watching spot right now, more than wildlife. So I'm a professor in the film department, art and film department at Humboldt State. So I'm particularly interested in the artwork, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about potentially what you had in mind, or if, are you talking, you mentioned a design on a litter receptacle. Is that what you're talking about, or is there going to be some other aspect to the public art installation? And I would be happy to, reach out to, my community and help you also with that.
Perfect. That's one of the things I was hoping to achieve. So before I get to that, I've put on the screen our customer service web portal. So if you see anything anywhere on the state highway system and you would like Caltrans to provide customer service, whether that's a broken light or, excessive litter or something, we can't run out and pick up one McDonald's wrapper. I'm sure you understand, but if somebody dumped something or you see something, the best way to tell us is through this customer service portal. And we actually look at and respond to every single inquiry. So if you run by and you happen to notice something that we need to take care of, let us know. So to answer your other question, since you didn't ask about that, but we need more eyes to keep things taken care of. We just can't see everything all at once. For art, we were thinking that the art might be taking the plain concrete park benches and decorating them, painting them. And at first I reached out to the Wildlife Refuge to see if they were interested in designs that would match, and they haven't responded. So then we thought, well, maybe the school kids down the road would be interested, or Friends of the Dunes. So we're really interested in, what do you think of the idea of having the benches painted? We thought that might help protect them and make them part of the community as part of the art. If there's interest in other art and probably something similar, we haven't figured out the trash cans yet, but we're hoping to put something that's not just plain and simple. So if you've got ideas of who could do the art, if there's a way to have that be community art, that would be something we would love to hear about. And I guess if you'd like other art, then I will have to look at our budget and see whether we can do that. If you tell me 2 picnic benches isn't enough, then I'll have to go look at our budget and see if we can do that. I mean, that's what I need to know, is what do you want? We budgeted for 2 picnic benches, a trash receptacle, striping the parking lot, and some native plantings that, once they're established, will be drought resistant. So, but we can make adjustments so that you guys get the park that you want.
Thank you.
That sounds good. Thank you. And so, Dave, perhaps you'd connect with Julia offline on kind of what you're thinking there. All right. That sounds
perfect.
good.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Does any other board members have any questions at this time?
I have
Oh, we're
a
frozen.
question.
There you go.
I'm wondering if by moving the parking spaces away from the center of that lot, there's going to be more enforcement possibilities to keep people from camping there. Or if, just because I'm worried about people doing going to a spot and staying for a week or.
What we're, your video, your audio is really glitchy, so I'm not sure if you finished speaking. Or maybe my reception is.
No, it's cutting in and out for me as well. But from what I heard John saying, it sounds like he's there may be a potential concern with people camping overnight, staying in that location.
If we make the changes,
as currently designed. So I guess that's the part I can't read his mind on, is maybe what a different design would look like that he was suggesting that would keep people from doing that. But
okay. The concept was to bring more people to the community.
There's one thing off spot is if it's a different spacing that police, I don't know, have more authority to go and move those people camping along.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know why it would change, but I don't know that it wouldn't. I don't know. But it wouldn't be anywhere near as easy to hide your vehicle further back into what's currently paved, because it really would bring the parking right up front by the edge of the traveled way. Mm-hmm. So that I think would help. Just more visibility, less place to hide.
Thank you.
With that, I'd like to go to the public and see if there are any members here in the public who would like to make public comment on this item. And I see Nancy has her hand raised. So Nancy, we'll go with you, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, well, no, I wondered whether we should talk to Esther with the Family Resource Center. I think at least at some time in the past, she used this site for, I don't even know what, food distribution or, and so just, I think she'd be really excited about it, but just if there were things that might help assist her in doing that. And then the other thing I thought about too, and I guess it was Sequoia's comment made me think of it. I do see this as a birding place. And so maybe a picnic table, but then instead of two, I think you said two, maybe have benches that kind of look out over the bay. So that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any other members of the public who are here this evening that would like to make a comment on this item? Please raise your hand now.
This is Dendra. I don't know if you can see my hand raised.
I cannot see your hand, but I can hear you. So go ahead, Dendra.
I was going to suggest the same thing about talking to Esther at the Community Resource Center, because I knew they do the food distribution, and a picnic table would probably be helpful with that. And when she was saying picnic benches, were you talking just about benches and not a picnic table? Or
We were planning on 2 picnic tables.
oh, okay, because you said picnic benches and I wasn't sure. Okay.
I guess to me they were sort of similar, but no, we were talking about 2 of the concrete picnic tables that they sell at Hillfiker. They're heavy, Parks Department, concrete, really sturdy. They should hold up to the salt air.
Yeah, I agree. So maybe what Nancy was saying about the 2 benches facing the bay too. And
Okay.
then I'm just wondering, like right now when I drove home, there were 2 like motor homes or a car with the wheels off across from that on the highway. And so is Caltrans going to be moving stuff like that if it ends up in that parklet?
I believe that we would. Don't we do that now?
I don't know. Some of those things are there for a while.
I don't want to promise anything that I don't know for sure. So I'm writing down questions. I would assume that we would, but I did share the customer service request website. Are you able to see the screen when I share that right here? It's csr.dot.ca.gov.
Yes, I wrote that down.
And if you go to that, I'm going to go there. It looks like this. You select your situation, whatever it might be. And we give you lots of choices. And then find the location on this map. Whoops, not Portland. And you'll drop a little pin wherever the problem is, and then it'll ask you some questions. Oops, down below, and you'll answer the questions about what's going on. And then one of our customer service people will get back to you.
Okay.
So that is a great way.
Is that on 255 all the way down to Fairhaven also, or is that county after that?
I believe it's the county after that. So it's got to be on the state route. The county has a very similar website on the county public works. I personally reported a pothole that wanted to eat my truck, and they came and fixed it. So I know the county's customer service on their public works department does work.
Okay. Well, that's good to know about. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's just me as a local resident, so.
Okay.
Not an official Caltrans thing.
Lots of potholes.
Yeah, well, there was one that was just so big that I'm surprised that people with little cars didn't break an axle. So
Yeah.
But they came and fixed it, so I still appreciate that new pavement every day. What can I say? So for artwork, it sounds like I'm going to hear from Dave, because that's one of the things that the questions that I have are, do you like what we have thought of? What adjustments would you like? And what I hear is that two people like the bench idea facing the bay. 2 picnic tables seems like the right number. I haven't heard anybody say they don't like that number. What else would you want to tell me about how you would like this parklet to be?
For formality, I would like to close the public comment period.
Oh, okay.
We got through that and bring it back to the board for additional discussion. And I think that would tie in then to the feedback that you're looking for, perhaps. I do concur. I see a lot of people there doing wildlife viewing, also photography. Some people in a low tide, maybe walking their dogs along the railroad tracks up and down from that point. So that's good. I understand the complications associated with a coastal development permit. I mean, frankly, that would be signage would be what I would like to see added. I think, whether or not this project happens, that is an area where people go and dump and their garbage and leave their parked cars, and whether this is here or not, I think that ends up continuing. Does that encourage people to sleep on the picnic tables and sleep on the benches? Perhaps, but either way, I think it's happening, and certainly I do think this is an improvement to our area and facilities nearby. So I appreciate Caltrans moving this forward as a project. And yeah, I agree, with Dave regarding the art. I think he'd be a great resource to reach out to, and the other things that you mentioned, regarding reaching out to the community school, the refuge is also good. Perhaps after the meeting, or for the commenters who referred to Esther and the food portion of it. Chris may have information for her. If Chris does not have contact information for her, perhaps Nancy or Dendra, if you have that, you can pass it our way, so we can pass it along to make sure that we're help facilitating the needs of community members who may use that space for other reasons.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, for me, so overall, in support of what you're doing, and I'm happy with the design. I think the benches are a great idea too. The picnic tables, also a great idea. So I don't see a need for necessarily more picnic tables, but it's flexible there. So were there any other board members that had comments on the design? Or input for Julia to consider?
I was just going to quickly say, because you said community school, I'm assuming you're talking the Redwood Coast Montessori.
Yeah.
But there also is the Samoa Elementary School, which is almost like the same distance away from that spot. So I think between those two schools and Dave, Janetta, you guys could definitely figure out some sort of art thing. The other option would be to post something on Lost Coast Outpost or something like that, saying that you're looking for artists to kind of submit a, application to do something, and best idea wins or whatever. But yeah, I think the 2 picnic tables is plenty, and the benches would be nice if they're along the water, or if just the tables are oriented in a way that, but if there's funding for additional benches for bird watching, that would be great. And yeah, that's all I had to say. So thanks again, Julia. That's exciting news.
Thank you. Is there another way you can recommend that we get more community feedback in Manila?
Oh, yeah, I thought, and Chris, I was gonna look to you for this. Something that came to my mind was Nextdoor, that, the Nextdoor app. It seems to me our agendas go on there, and there's, there is activity happening there. So I think that's a way to reach out. The traditional method of flyers on poster board or kind of on community boards. I think there would be an opportunity to put a flyer up at the district office, and I believe there's also a board at the Manila Park. A lot of people go there for frisbee golf and other recreational activities, and perhaps at the school, but other than that, I'll leave it to Chris. See if there's other suggestions. Yes.
Yeah, Julia, if you don't mind, I can make a little blurb on Nextdoor Manila and then just have them contact you.
Sure, that would be great. I can set up a survey or do other things, but you could just send out my email. That'd be great.
Okay, and it should be framed around artwork and just general ideas about that parklet.
Yeah, it sounds like, I think what we want to know is, who should we involve in the artwork? And I'm not sure that I got more ideas, but I didn't hear a definitive thing. So just finding out who, we could actually take the benches to whoever's going to do them, and they could start on that relatively soon. So if the community wanted kids artwork, we could take one park bench to the Montessori school and one park bench to the elementary school, and they could each decorate them, and then we'll bring a forklift and pick them up and take them to the parklet when it's done. We could do something like that. Or if the community would prefer, that we advertise for a local artist and do the Lost Coast Outpost thing, then, who would you think you would want to have making the art on the benches? Maybe you want the HSU students, or, so that would be something that opinions on the art would be really helpful. We're ready to bring benches to whoever the community wants to decorate them.
Excellent.
Yeah, great. And I think, ultimately, any of the public in attendance at this meeting or board members could reach out to you directly, and then based on the responses you get from the community outreach that Chris is doing, I think then you could have what you need to make a decision on that.
That would be great.
That sounds good.
And I'm happy to be the point person, Julia, to help with that. I mean, obviously, we want as much community's input as possible, and I can help kind of facilitate. And it is a question too of do we want, not saying that children wouldn't make a professional or whatever looking bench, but I mean, there's a certain charm to that. Or do we want it to fit more, fit nicely with the theme of the marsh, or the fact that that it's native Wiyot land, or whatever the case may be. And that's it is a larger conversation, but it can't, it's not necessarily like a democracy. But we'll see what feedback you get, and we can talk through the options, and see what other community members send to you, and figure out the best path going forward. If that makes
what
sense.
I can say is, if we leave it to the engineers at Caltrans, it'll either be plain concrete color or orange.
Yeah.
So I think that we can do better than that. And we just have to decide what you guys want to have, what the community wants to see. So Dave, I realize that my presentation doesn't have my email address. I don't know how I managed to do that, but it is on the Zoom invitation, and Chris has it as well. So
I just want to say, I like what you said, Dave, on the Wiyot. It'd be interesting to reach out to the Wiyot tribe as well. That would be a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, agreed.
I think there is opportunity for art on each of the benches, and then depending on the trash receptacle that is selected, it could have panels for art or interpretive things. Another community that we have a different Clean California project is doing community mosaics on their bins. Others are putting messages on theirs. So, it's really about what you'd like to see. Do you want the bin just to blend in with, we have plain brown. Again, we're good at rest area brown, but do you want something a little different? And if so, we'll have to figure out what that is. So otherwise you'll get rest area brown.
Great, thank you, Julia. And I would offer too that people could definitely send email over to the district, and we'll make sure that that gets to Julia as well. If you don't have her email address, is there any link online regarding the Parklet design that people could look at?
Not yet. We are working on that. What I'm showing you now is the fact sheet. Is actually it's an almost final draft. It's not even the final yet.
Would it be appropriate when there is the final that's something Chris could make available on the next door? So I would think that it'd probably be less abstract should we have some type of this presentation or something to go along with the request.
I expect that I'll have a final this week.
Okay, great.
And so I know there are a few changes being made to this one, but it's what I have today. That's sort of the speed of Clean California right now. So
yeah, it's great.
We go with the best that we have, and then we do better in a few days. And so I should have a final or an almost final updated later this week, and I can get that to Chris, and that could actually be posted anywhere. And it has my contact. Oh, there you go. See, I do have my email on there. It's on the almost final flyer.
Okay, great.
So we could even have posters of this made if you'd like to hang them in the community service district. If that would be useful, we can do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I'll leave it to Chris to coordinate with you on that part of the effort.
Okay. What else can we do to work with the community? Anything else? If you're all good, I'll let you return to your regularly scheduled meeting. And
that sounds good.
All right.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. We'll be in touch as we have more information, and I do appreciate you taking the time to come and speak with us at the board meeting this evening.
Well, thank you for the opportunity and for the feedback. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Julia.
I'll be in touch with Dave and Chris. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. Take care. All right, thank you, everybody. Moving along to presentation item number 2. I was saying to Chris, this is a timely matter given the events over the weekend with the tsunami warning that we did have. We have a presentation regarding tsunami evacuation routes, a virtual tour, and at that, I'll turn it over to Chris for some staff.
Thank you. I think this thing glitches when I start zooming around on Google Earth, so I'll try not to do that too much. But I do want to embarrass our friend Jason Patton, who's here, because he's a rock star of geology and a Manila resident. And I'm going to put him online. He wants to get out of here pretty soon. But this map was created by you, Jason, back in 2011. And we walked these routes back then and drew little lines all over your map. And I think there might be some revisions to it, but I'm not sure. And like Megan said, it's a very timely matter. It's always timely to some degree, but today is especially timely. So I'll turn it over to you, Jason, and you let me know if I can screen share for you or anything like that.
All right, great. Hey, thanks, Chris. Been a resident here for 25 years, and so I'm glad to be working at the California Geological Survey. And we just recently updated the tsunami hazard area maps for the entire county. And I'm just here to answer any questions. If anyone has any questions, I can share my screen. I have the updated tsunami hazard area polygons that we could overlay. But basically these red lines you see in Chris's screen are some evacuation routes that the community came up with, over 10 years ago. And if I understand it correctly, there's going to be a tsunami evacuation drill coming up in March. And I don't know any of the details about that, but I imagine there will be a certain time that it starts, and we'll want to have people leaving their houses at that time and heading up to these evacuation sites, which are those green symbols on the map. Okay, it says March 19th at 9:30 a.m. is when the drill will be. So I'm just here to answer any questions. If anyone has any questions about the new maps or anything like that.
Great, thank you. Sequoia, I see your hand is up.
Hey, Jason, thanks for being here.
Hi, Sequoia.
I had two questions. One is kind of, I guess, a personal question. Where I live, and there's for people that are in the situation I'm in, where we could either go to the community center evacuation route, or we could go down to the Pacific Avenue evacuation route. Is there a one that we should prefer in the event of a large earthquake and an evacuation?
What I would do is I would try each of them and time yourself and see which is the fastest.
Okay.
And there might be alternate routes, so that require you to go through private property. But when it comes to tsunami evacuation, you need to take care of yourself, and because you can't help other people if you're not taking care of yourself first. So you might want to consider there are a lot. So the big thick lines are the lines that are pretty much go through public property. But there are some routes that go through private property that you might want to consider. But I can't make any recommendations about that. But
I just wasn't sure if there's any sort of lack of, like, it seems like there's no lack of actual high enough ground for people to hang on. There's not like a spot where you're worried about all these residents are going to be going to this one spot and congregating in it, and it would be better if they were dispersed over other areas, or if that's even a concern at all.
that's correct. There's a lot of high ground here, and all of those, I have this, all of those are still outside of the tsunami hazard area, except for the one that's where the Manila Dunes, the Friends of the Dunes Nature Center is. That we might want to think of moving that, because there's a little low spot where the road is. Do you have the tsunami hazard area loaded up on your Google Earth, Chris?
I don't have that. You mean the map, the original map from 2000?
No, the new lines.
No, I can get that in a minute.
Okay. Or you could let me share my screen,
Oh, sure.
because I have it all loaded and ready to go.
Yeah, go ahead. And
All right, I will share the screen. Can people see the yellow colored map?
it's still on mine.
No.
No.
If you click on the view options, there we go. If you go to view options and then you scroll down to Jason Patton on the shared screens.
So I'll zoom back out first.
So what are we looking at here? Or I don't know if people have.
Yeah, I'll describe it. Can people see it now? Are everyone caught up?
Can
Yep.
you give me 1 second? I'm having a hard time doing
What
it.
I'm viewing is Jason's screen, although I agree, I did change my view option. I
Okay,
don't know if you could just stop sharing.
there we go.
All right, so we're looking at satellite imagery of the area, and there are some yellow lines and some red dots, and those yellow lines are the evacuation routes that were the same that you saw on Chris's map, and the red dots are the evacuation points, which are those high spots, and they were green dots on Chris's map in your packet. What I've done, well, let me turn it off so we can just see that only the routes, the sites, and the aerial imagery. So now I'm going to turn on a yellow area. And this yellow area is the newly updated tsunami hazard area. And this is a very, very conservative way of mapping the tsunami hazard. And so basically what we want you to do is if you're in the yellow area, we want you to get out of the yellow area. So because the yellow area is the tsunami hazard area. And these areas that are not yellow, like for example, in the middle, you can see the ponds, the water treatment ponds. Those areas that are not yellow, those are the areas that are high enough that they can be outside of the tsunami hazard area. And you'll see that all of the evacuation points, the red dots, are in these higher areas. So for like in the south, here's the community center trail, and it goes up to that observation deck. If it's still there, I haven't been there in a while. And that is an area that's out of the tsunami hazard area. But I just noticed, I didn't notice this until just now. If we zoom in, and I'll zoom in to Stamps Lane, where the Friends of the Dunes Nature Center is, and the Nature Center is actually in a low spot. And so we will, before the drill, we'll update this, and we'll, I'll help Chris and Ryan Aylward with the National Weather Service. I'll help everyone. We'll relocate this point so that it's not in the hazard area. Does that make sense to everyone? Are there questions about that?
How big of a tsunami does the yellow represent?
That's a great question. So if you remember, the 2011 Japan tsunami was much larger than they expected. And they were planning, basically, I'm summarizing this and paraphrasing this. They had, before 2011, Japan had been planning for a tsunami that was more like a 500-year tsunami. You've heard of the 100-year flood zone. Well, we have 100-year tsunamis, 500-year tsunamis, 1,000-year tsunamis. And so the 2011 tsunami for that area of Japan was more like a 1,000-year tsunami. So what we've done is, for most of the state, we've made the tsunami hazard area based on a tsunami that might happen once every 1,000 years, a 1,000-year tsunami. Well, Manila is a special place. And what we did was we made it even more conservative. And so the tsunami, that the hazard area in the entire Samoa Peninsula, is based on the 2,500-year tsunami. So it is very infrequent. It's big, but it's very infrequent. But people should feel extra safe that they have made it outside of the hazard area, because they're extra specially safe. So, and the height, I'll get to you, Dave, in a moment, in just a second. The height of the tsunami is different depending on where you are. So that's why I didn't answer that question like that. Dave?
Cool. Thanks for being here, Jason. Very quickly, I get that, like, it's a very it totally varies depending on a lot of factors, but I mean, generally speaking, approximately how much time from these warnings that we get can we expect to have to get to the zones?
All right. Oh, I'm so glad you asked that question, Dave. There are two types of tsunami. Excuse me. There are distant tsunami that come from elsewhere and then come here, and that's like what we had from Hunga Tonga the last couple days ago. That's a distant tsunami, and it takes some time to get here. And then there are local tsunami that would be generated by the Cascadia subduction zone. So a local tsunami, your warning is the ground shaking, and if the ground shakes for a long period of time, 20 seconds, a half a minute, that's your warning that you need to get to high ground as soon as you can. And it's possible that the tsunami could come on shore during the earthquake, especially if the earthquake lasts 3 or 4 minutes. So what we tell people is first, because there's an earthquake, you want to drop, cover, and hold on so that you don't get hurt by anything falling on you. And then as soon as you can stand and walk, that's when you need to evacuate. And that might be during the ground shaking. If you can walk and start evacuating during the ground shaking, that's a really good idea. Now, if it's a distant tsunami, there may be helicopters flying overhead. There might be police coming down the road with sirens telling people to evacuate. And that in that situation, we have more time to evacuate. For example, it takes about 4 hours for a tsunami to get here from Alaska. But we won't be, the modeling won't happen for an hour to an hour and a half into that 4-hour period. And so we might not get the knowledge that we need to evacuate until about 2 hours or an hour and a half before the tsunami arrives. So we don't have that entire amount of time to evacuate, but we have more than 5 or 10 minutes, which is the time we have if it's a local tsunami. Does that help answer your question?
Perfect. Thank you.
Great.
So just to kind of, so you're saying that it sounds like the soonest that would likely happen is 3 minutes would be like a very unlikely but possible, or is there a possibility of even sooner than that, or?
Probably not sooner than that. That's probably a good rule of thumb, but we don't really know. So you just want to get to high ground as soon as you can, walk, head to high ground. David?
Sorry, one more quick question. Can you talk about the sort of like the flow of the water and how it's actually going to sort of inundate Manila? Is it all going to be coming from the ocean, or is some going to go into the bay and like wrap around, or what are the hydro dynamics or whatever you call it?
That's a good question. Let's see if I have, I don't have the data loaded. So remember, this yellow area is a very, very conservative line. And lots of the tsunami water is going to come through the mouth of the bay, and lots of water will come through the mouth of the Mad River. And once water enters the mouth of the bay, it will spread out throughout the bay. And it won't be, like the wave won't be as high when it gets to Arcata compared to South Eureka, because that water spread out. And so the bay side of the peninsula will probably get tsunami flow from the bay. But then there's also going to be tsunami flow from the coast. And depending upon how big the tsunami is, the tsunami may or may not overtop the dunes in some of these locations. So we think that the most, like, for example, the 1,000-year tsunami, that is what we use to map the tsunami hazard area elsewhere. That 1,000-year tsunami, let me go ahead and see if I can quickly add it, because it's really visual and I know right where to find it. So processed. It's just taking a sec for it to load. 975 Humboldt Bay. Okay, so this gives you this will give you some idea of what the 1,000-year tsunami might look like. And let me turn off the tsunami hazard area. So the 1,000-year tsunami, which is smaller than the 2,500-year tsunami, we don't think that tsunami would overtop the dunes at all. This is in the black. That is what we've modeled to be the 1,000-year tsunami. And it shows that the tsunami does not overtop the dunes, but it does come and inundate a little bit of the shoreline along the bay. And if we zoom in a little closer, we'll be able to see that that even most of the houses that are along the bay won't get inundated by the 1,000-year tsunami. But we don't want to assume that it's going to be the 1,000-year tsunami. We want to use the yellow area, the tsunami hazard area, just to be extra safe. So does that help, Dave?
Perfect. Once again, thank you.
Okay, great.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
Brett has a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, great.
Or,
Thanks. Once you go to public comment.
ahead, Brett.
Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
I'm sorry.
When I open the public comment, we'll go to Brett. I did have just a couple of comments and then we'll move to public comment. But thank you for that explanation. I think that was very helpful. And just to clarify regarding the local event, when you're talking about the, it could be 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and the timing associated with that. There's also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's also an intensity associated with that and in that time. So even if it's a, say 30 second to 1 minute, but it's not that intense, that you probably don't need to be running to higher ground. I mean, I'm not the OES, but I just wanted to, not in every case of every earthquake are you running to higher ground. So,
Well,
we should be, I don't know, maybe that's a clarification.
you might want to, because, and here's why, which
Yeah.
is maybe not intuitive,
Mhm.
right? Because it's like what you just said is intuitively correct, right?
Mhm.
And what might happen is that the earthquake fault, the subduction zone, maybe it ruptures, it slips, but it doesn't slip right where we are,
Mhm.
but it slips nearby. Because, there was an earthquake yesterday in France, or in Italy. And did you feel it? No, you didn't feel it. And why didn't you feel it? Because it was too far away. So the further away you are, the less the ground shakes. And so if the subduction zone slipped to it slipped only from Washington down to Crescent City, and it didn't slip any further south, you might not feel as strong,
Mhm.
but there still would be a tsunami.
Mhm.
So what Lori Dengler always says, when in doubt, drill it out.
Mhm.
And so it turns into just an evacuation drill if nothing
Okay.
happens.
Okay.
So, but what you said was totally intuitive,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, because if there's a small earthquake here, I'm not like running for up on top of the dune. Maybe I should be based on that clarification. So thank you. I appreciate that. And just a couple other questions, or comments that I got from this weekend that may or may not be appropriate for this, but one is, if you evacuate, will you take me in your car? And I think, I know the answer to that is no, because the bridges might not work. That's why we're not jumping in cars and driving all out of here. Should there be a tsunami, you don't have time. And frankly, the highway could be inundated. So I think that's the answer on the car route.
Absolutely.
However, the other question is, why would it be safe to evacuate to a sand dune? The porous sand dune, or maybe it's not, but structurally, how sound are the dunes, as an evacuation point? Seems to be something I hear a lot, and I don't have an answer to that.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it's the highest ground we have.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that. And then these dunes we think that these dunes were formed more than 6,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I have a long story to describe why we think that. But we think these dunes, especially the taller dunes, are over 6,000 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've had a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake on average about every 200 years here. And so there have been many Cascadia subduction zone earthquakes, and these dunes are still here. So we think that the tall dunes especially are safe places to be because they've lived through
Mhm.
many Cascadia subductions and earthquakes.
Great.
Will that help
Yeah.
you answer that?
Yeah, I think so. My typical response is, well, they're they're emergency responders. Why would they send us somewhere unsafe?
Right.
But that's not a very compelling answer to a lot of
No.
people, but I find yours to be more compelling. So thank you. I will try that out. So Koi, I saw your hand raised. If you have another question, I'd always like to move on to public comment and get
Yeah,
Jason back to his
shoot.
regular life here sometime tonight.
Yeah, sorry, Jay, you got the most exciting topic in board history
Well,
here. So
I'm here to help. So
when you were talking about the potential of a less severe feeling earthquake still causing a tsunami, that would also imply that would be the type of situation where you would have somewhat more time, I would imagine, or just want to make sure I'm clear on that. Like, if it doesn't feel like a big earthquake, then but it's still, you should still evacuate, but you probably have a little bit of time. Whereas if it's a massive feeling earthquake, then that's more likely the type that would be an immediately striking type event. Is there some correlation with that?
possibly, but I think it's best to suggest to everyone that they evacuate as soon as they think they need to evacuate. Because and here's real quick, here's why, is because people tend to lollygaggle even when they're trying to rush. And if you say that you can lollygaggle, then they're going to lollygaggle even more. And so, just from human behavior angle of things, we want to stress that people evacuate as soon as they can.
So would you prioritize just getting to high ground would be a much bigger priority than necessarily gathering your appropriate supplies? Like, because I'm thinking of New Orleans and like us sitting on these dunes for a week with nobody coming to help us, and turns into a survivor situation, and or what?
It won't be a week, but it could be a whole day. And so that's why it's good to practice and have these drills so that you have your go kit ready to go. And if we do a drill every year, people will sort of get it into, it's a habit, like, oh, it's drill time, here's my bag, and you have it. And so
but if you're out in your yard gardening and there's a giant earthquake, are you just like, I'm going to the dune, or are you like, I'm gonna go into my house, get my go kit, and then go?
Maybe you get the go kit that's in your car. All I can say is do your best to get up there.
Okay, I got you. Sorry for that. The very last question I had, and I swear I'll be quiet after this. The volcanic eruption that caused this tsunami a couple days ago, it seemed like half the people I talked to got a warning. I know my dad got a warning on his mobile device, and my partner and I did not, and a few other people I talked to did not, and some people who said they had specifically signed up for those warnings. I don't know if you know anything about that, or why some people would and wouldn't get those notifications.
That's really good that you brought that up, because their Humboldt County alert, I think, is what you need to sign up for. I just did a internet search and I typed in Humboldt County alert, and the first result is sign up for emergency notifications, Humboldt County. Let me bring that. And so here is, I searched for it, and this is the Humboldt alert, where you can sign up for emergency notifications. So that's what you need to do. And there are two ways. So there's the county alert, and everyone wants to sign up for that. And then there's also the feds have an alert that they send through your service provider. So your cell phone provider, that's called the WEA, the Wide Area, I can't remember the acronym, WEA. And the feds will push that notification to everyone in the county because those areas aren't very well defined. So I don't think, but because the tsunami was, so there are these different levels. There's watch, advisory, and warning. Warning's the highest level. This was an advisory, which is basically clear out the beaches. If it were a warning level tsunami, a much larger tsunami, then the feds would have pushed out a WIA alert and everyone with a cell phone would have gotten a notification. But I think it didn't do that because it was in an advisory level, which is a lower level. So I suggest everyone go up and sign up for emergency notifications via Humboldt Alert. And that way you'll get those notifications.
And those are useful for both types of earthquakes, the long distance one and the close ones.
For local earthquakes and tsunamis, the earthquake is your warning. You will not get, there will not be an, well, earthquake early warning, and you might be able to get an earthquake early warning alert. And for that, you need to sign up for My Shake. So My Shake, it's an app. You can get it on Android or on Apple. And the My Shake app, you have to turn that on, and that will give you an early warning report when an earthquake happens close enough to you to feel it. And that is useful, for example, if you're, you know, like doing heart surgery and you want to pull the scalpel out of your patient. Now, I don't know any of you who might be doing that, but that's a really good example of something you could do before the earthquake hit. Or if you're, you know, if you're up on a ladder, you could get down off the ladder, you know, so that's it. Awesome. You're welcome.
Great, thank you. Chris, I see you have your hand up, and then I'll go to public comment next. And you're on mute. Thank you.
My question's kind of like, I guess it's a public comment thing, but Jay, can you briefly talk about the magnitude 1 designation that Tonga represented and how that might, like if there are pressure sensors in the ocean that would detect an asteroid or another volcano that's not necessarily a tsunami generated by an earthquake?
Oh gosh. So that's a tough question. So there are buoys, there are pressure sensors out in the ocean, and it's part of a DART, D-A-R-T, so a DART buoy, the DART buoy system. And let's see here, DART buoy system. And so there are buoys all around the Pacific, and here's a map of some of the buoys. And these buoys, what they do, they have a pressure sensor at the bottom of the ocean, and they can detect tsunami waves or any wave. And I think that these are set up so that if there are large anomalies, well, I know that they do this. If there's an anomalous wave, it'll go into an alert, and the Tsunami Warning Center will take a look at that. So, and the volcanic eruption caused waves that they use the DART buoys to calibrate their tsunami models. So there's some out there, but there's a lot that we don't understand, and each volcanic eruption is different in how it might generate a tsunami. So we're going to be learning a lot from this Tonga eruption and tsunami over the next couple of years. But there's a lot that we still don't know. Hopefully that helped. Okay, good.
Thank you. Before any other hands are raised, I'm going to public comment. So this would be the time on the agenda for members of the public who are here to raise their hand and provide comments or questions to the board on this item. And you know, for whatever it's worth, please state your comments and questions at one time, and we will come back to them once we close the public comment. So with that, I will go to Brett. Thank you, Brett, for your patience.
Yeah, great. Thanks so much. Great presentation, Jay. Question on so for that 1,000-year, and then I mean the 2,500 year, recurrences for those water levels. Would those be more so, I mean, asteroids and such excluded, more so associated with like a Cascadia event versus something, well away? And then I guess the other thing, in the hydrodynamics of the bay, did you find, so it's interesting you found that that you get lower water levels like up near Arcata as it spreads out, because I think in tidal hydraulics it's been interesting to see that it's actually higher at Arcata, and like in Eureka Slough there's actually like a ramp up effect as it goes up into the bay. So I'm wondering if are your models based on like an elevation, or is it a hydrodynamic model that you use in the modeling of like that tsunami wave?
I'll answer the second question first. Yeah, it's fully hydrodynamic modeling, and it's probably the velocity that's controlling that. So in the mouth of the bay is a big constriction, and so if that water is moving fast, it'll create turbulence that slows the water down. And whereas now I don't know exactly why, like the high tide at Mad River Slough is going to be higher than the high tide at the mouth of Elk River, presuming there's no water coming out of the Elk. I don't know why that is. Yeah, so
yeah, no, that makes sense with the velocity. And then I guess, yeah, the other question about the kind of what creates a tsunami that low frequency and that big.
Yeah, so so the sources that are used for all the tsunami modeling involve all the subduction zones around the Pacific. And without going into the nitty-gritty details, because that'd take me an hour, there are some places that contribute more to the tsunami than others. And the 500-year tsunami, the major that's my cat, if you can hear it. The major contributor for the 500-year tsunami is actually the Alaska subduction zone offshore of Alaska. But once you get to the 1,000-year and 2,500-year, the dominant source, tsunami source, is Cascadia. So, so it was a complicated answer.
No, that is perfect. Thanks.
Right. You're on mute.
Thanks, Brett. Any other members of the public like to make public comment in this time? Please raise your hand. Dender, I see your hands raised. Go ahead.
Yes, I finally figured it out. So just some information from my probably 20 years teaching preschool in Manila and doing evacuations with preschoolers.
Nice.
And the trainings I'd gone to, what I learned was that for that 30 seconds, and I taught my kids this, and they do this every time there's an earthquake, to count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003 as soon as it starts. And Jay can say whether this is correct, but what I've been told was if you can't stand up or walk, like he said, during those 30 seconds, that's definitely time to go. And then the other thing my question was about power lines and the Bayside, because years ago I'd gone on different field trips and with geologists from Oregon and Washington that came down with Lori Dangler, and they went down the peninsula, and they were talking about that if a tsunami overtops the peninsula down there or goes through the bay, it's going to go into, Eureka, where like the bay, they were saying, don't be at the Bayshore Mall, don't, where all those gasoline tank things are.
Yeah.
That all that stuff and wood from over there is going to come back when it goes out. It's going to be bringing, when it goes in, the tsunami, then it's going to bring stuff out.
Yeah.
So that's one question. And then the other one was, is the power towers that PG&E had, when I was on the board, given us this letter stating that they would stand.
Yep. Yep.
And are they gonna, do you know if they're gonna shut the power off or not if there's a major earthquake or a tsunami?
Okay, well, I'll answer the second question first. I don't know whether they'll shut the power off. It's probable that it will be shut off, just because of their safety concerns, their safety concerns, which help us in our safety concerns. And I do know that what they did as a basis for that letter that PG&E wrote, the Redwood Coast Tsunami Work Group, is that they analyzed the towers. They did an analysis of the towers and compared that to the ground shaking from a Cascadia subduction zone earthquake. And they wouldn't have written a letter like that. They have, because they're taking on all the liability. You can just imagine if they were writing a letter like that, they're taking on the liability. So that was the basis of that letter. And then you had a question about the debris. The debris is just stuff that the waves are going to move around, trash and cars and trees and all that sort of stuff, the lumber stacks. So that's, I'm going to pan up again. That's right. Whatever that is on land where the tsunami inundates, if that stuff floats, that tsunami is going to pick it up and move it around. And our collaborator at USC, this fellow engineer, Pat Lynette, he does debris modeling. And in the next few years, we're going to be incorporating the debris modeling into tsunami hazard products. Now, we don't know exactly what the answer will be in terms of, where the stuff will go. But you're right, Dandra, that the tsunami is going to inundate these areas like the lumber mills where there's lots of wood and the wood floats, and that tsunami is going to move that wood around, that debris, and that's going to be hazardous. And that's why tsunamis are really dangerous, is because not only are they water, but they also have all that debris in there, and it can cut you up and hurt you. So I hope that helped. I know I didn't have a very certain, perfect answer, but I hope it helped.
So, one other question, Jay. Right where I live, where you live, there's a power line that goes right down that road.
Yeah.
A regular
the regular power line.
Well, now I'm just asking about the regular power lines, because if they fall,
yeah,
I mean, they can break.
I'm sure. So I'm going to zoom in. So in the map, I have the big power lines. There's a buffer around those in orange, but Dendra's talking about just the power lines that go along our streets. And, PG&E checks those all the time. They're always checking those every year. But I'm sure that some of those poles are just about to break and they don't know it. And so it would not be surprising if some of those power poles broke during a subduction zone earthquake. And so what's going to happen after that? Well, some of the transformers are going to blow and a lot of the power is going to go out. So a lot of those wires are going to go dead, but you don't know if they're dead or not. So it's really important to try to avoid those wires. And it might make it difficult to evacuate, because if you're evacuating and there are wires on the ground, you want to walk around those wires. So it can be challenging. And so maybe, practicing these evacuation drills and maybe trying alternate routes sometimes, maybe that'll help you be better to respond to these changes that happen that we can't anticipate. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I might be stuck.
Yeah. Well, you're right next to a really high dune, so
I know, but those little
Yeah.
power lines are around there. So
Yeah,
I'll figure it out.
yeah. That
I'll
Bev's,
follow you.
yeah, well, Bev's property just right to the west of you, that's high enough where the spruce trees are. That's pretty high. But you know what? You'll make a good decision at the time, I know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dendra. Were there any other members of the public who would like to ask questions at this time? I'm seeing none. I'd like to close the public comment portion and bring it back to the board to see this is a presentation, a non-action item, so there's no action that needs to be taken on our end. And I will say we have some other items on the agenda, but for clarity in the public record and the chat function, there was a question regarding the siren and that not being heard on Saturday, and does it work? And I replied, that's my understanding from other board meetings that the siren does not work, and and it's not recommended to make it work based on current technology, that there may be a better way of going about this. Chris could, talk more about that and if I am correct or not. That's kind of what I thought we had talked about previously regarding the siren.
Yeah, I'll spare you, Jason, for a second on this one. We did talk with Troy Nicolini. He came to a meeting last month or the month before, or chimed in. And I also have a meeting, I think tomorrow, by the way, with the Tsunami Working Group. But yeah, we're going away from sirens because everybody has a phone and those alerts were working much better. And it's really difficult to maintain these metal objects in this corrosive environment. So that answers that. If we could get them running and keep them running like that, it'd be great. And as Dan Larkin said a while back, they're great educational tools and training tools, but otherwise we've got better technology today.
Thank you, appreciate that response. Did any members of the board have any additional questions or any more deliberation on this item? Before we close out, I'd like to thank you for your participation. This is very informative and very timely. So thank you for being here. And should there be any follow-up questions or comments, we will send them to Chris and they'll forward them along to you.
Right.
You're welcome anytime.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Appreciate
Welcome,
it.
everyone. Take care. Be well.
Thanks, you too. All right, great, moving along. So we're going to go to presentation item number 3, district financial mapping, how the funds flow through the agency. And this item is Chris.
Thank you. Do I even need to say how this is like following a dead puppy at a comedy show? Let's try this 1 second. Give me a minute. This should be pretty exciting. Can you guys see that? My monitor is not running right over here to show me what you're seeing. Okay. Last month, there was a lot of talk about some bank accounts and just some numbers were thrown around, and staff was asked to kind of do a brief overview of kind of how money flows through the district. The piece of paper I put in the packet was kind of hard to really see what's going on. So I thought I'd zoom in a little bit here, and I hope that it looks a little bit bigger. Let me move something out of the way. But generally speaking, our ratepayer funds, as they come into the district, go into our checking account. And that's where we have the vast majority of our activity is in that account. And then we use the county treasury to move money in and out of the account as needed for cash flow purposes. So if there's any questions, I can just jump right into that, unless I don't know how much more I can expand on this, other than I did add a grant funding node right here that we're going to be expecting to get significant grant funds over the next couple of years as we get these capital construction grants into the district, and we'll be putting money into the county treasury once the county treasury starts to get their act together a little better and prevent us from having heartburn over moving money in and out of that. So the whole left side of this diagram is where most of our activity happens. And all of these other accounts over here on the right in blue, these are all county treasury accounts. Basically, it's a savings account that's at the county level, and money from taxes are automatically deposited into that account every year. We get about $30,000 a year deposited directly into what's called the 2520, but you just call it the county treasury. And all the other accounts below this are accounts that we've created ourselves just as savings accounts to have different, like you might have a different savings account to save up for a new car or a house or something. We kind of did the same thing, but technically speaking, all of these accounts are the same. And this account right here, I don't know if this is moving around. You can tell what I'm doing. It's account 2521. That account was for debt service. We no longer have that debt, and we might reuse it when we do our water loan, which is going to be $350,000 in debt. And we'll be peeling off money every payment period for that when that comes around. So if anybody had any questions, I'll be more than happy to try to answer them.
Any board members have any questions for Chris? It is very thrilling. I know, Chris, thank you. Seeing none, I'll move it, see if there's any public comment on this item. If you want to comment, raise your hand. See Dendra, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
So with this debt for the new grant that you were talking about, is it going to be like the Davis Grunsky, or is it going to be like a water system assessment that property owners are going to be paying on their taxes? Or is it going to be that the district just pays it off from ratepayer funds?
As it stands today, we are not looking at doing an assessment. We might do that down the road if we find that our expenses exceed what the state has found that we can pay. So right now we're looking at a 40-year interest-free loan, and it turns out to equate, oddly enough, pretty much exactly what we currently collect is $2 per month per ratepayer for a CIP deposit. I think we talked about this briefly earlier today, Dendra, a little about the CIP, but we're not looking at doing an assessment. We think we can afford to so far to make these payments monthly or however they're going to bill us annually. I think it's about $12,000 to $17,000 annually. So it's not a tremendous amount, especially interest-free. And I believe there's going to be more information that comes back to the board before we actually sign on the dotted line for that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, close the public comment period and bring it back to the board. This is a presentation item. And if there are additional comments or questions, now would be the time. But if I see no hands raised, I would like to say thank you, Chris, for helping us clarify in our minds how this all works, and good for all of us to be aware of it. Appreciate the report, and on to the next item. Great. Let's see here. It is the one business item we have. This is a draft letter to CHP and the Sheriff's Office regarding increased precedents for speeding in Manila. And I'll go to Chris.
Thank you very much. Let me make sure I'm here. Okay. Yeah, last month it had come up that we wanted to gather a letter and get it approved by the board to send to whatever law enforcement is responsible for traffic in our area. It was kind of couched around the speed table we were considering doing and supporting over by the school site. And it was brought up that a lot of people are speeding on the other side of town. And now there's also OHVs, you might notice, and other people riding quads and motorcycles around town. So I got a hold of the CHP. They do have jurisdiction on the county roads, and we'll be more than happy to jump in, but I think they're expecting this letter. I'm also going to send it to the sheriff's office. So I just drafted this on behalf of Sequoia as our safety officer. And let me back up a little. And I'll rewrite this if anybody has anything to add to it or wants any modifications to it, but this is my draft attempt.
Thank you, Chris, for bringing this back to the board. Any comments or questions from the board members on the draft letter? I guess, are we specifically looking at Peninsula? I see a mention of Victor, Peninsula, and Mill Street, but just for clarification. Or were we talking generally the whole community or?
I think we're trying to get them to get law enforcement to make a little better presence generally. Those are the only county roads that they will be responsible for. Every other road is private, including Lupin, but they do exercise a lot of discretion in their authority in that regard.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Did anybody else have any questions or comments for Chris at this time? Seeing none, I'll open it for public comment. If a member of the public would like to speak on this letter, you can raise your hand in the Zoom app, I believe, in the chat function, or no, in the under participants is where you would raise your hand, I think. Otherwise, yes, Nancy, that's working. I see you, and we'll go to you first for comments.
Okay, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm really glad that the letter got drafted and it's going to get sent. And I was just, when I saw it, I thought, well, I hope that the board also at some time, and maybe they've done it already, addresses 255. Do you know? And I've been really thinking lately, like if the Nordic Aqua Farm gets approved, how much more traffic there would be. You know, so I don't know if that's something that the board has. I know in the past, for 30, 40 years, I think different boards have tried to deal with Caltrans and the issues there. They might be more receptive, because my understanding is that Caltrans now, whenever they have a new project, they have to consider non-vehicular pedestrian and bicycle as well as the vehicles. So I just think the community would really get behind that. So would like to suggest that the board do that as well.
Thank you, Nancy. Were there any other public comments on this item? Dendra, all right, you caught me right before I closed it. You're up.
Yeah, I wasn't going to comment, but I will.
I like to offer enough time. I know there's a little lag in the Zoom environment, so I typically count in my head before I just am constantly moving on to make sure to capture everybody. I'm
glad this letter's going and it's including the other areas of Manila where speeding is. You know, I concur with Nancy about Caltrans. I mean, we did this whole big, the district paid for part of a study. Well, part of it was paid for by the state in 2000. I think it was 7 or something like that. It was a transportation study, and they came up with all plans, how to slow the traffic down, roundabouts and stuff. And then it never happened. The only thing that ever happened is they're going to build that one section of a multi-use walkway. And, but this community's tried for over 40 years to get them to lower the speed limit. And then I noticed that the general manager put something in the board packet about the county wanted to take over 255. And I was going, I mean, maybe they would lower the speed limit, but I would hate to see the maintenance on it. I think Caltrans does a better job of maintenance, but I don't know. So just what Nancy said about the highway, it's been going on for 40 years. I mean, there needs to be another turnout lane right at, where Neary is there. Because there's no turnout lane there, and it's like a death trap sometimes with people speeding up behind you. And they won't, they said that they've done their studies, and they just say, the average speed is more than 55 miles an hour. So they can't, they won't even consider lowering it. And it's the smallest, it's an expressway. It's not just a highway. So, and when they start building the Indianola overpass, all that traffic is going to start going this way. So So you might be writing letters before that starts. But I know the community would get behind that. So that's all.
Thank you, Dendra. Appreciate your comments on this item. Seeing no other hands raised for public comment, I will close the public comment portion of for this item and bring it back to staff. Was there any comments or questions for Chris on this? I would offer, based on the public comment, that maybe there is a way, with it going to the highway patrol, who does, police the speeding on 255. I wouldn't make it, my recommendation, and you could perhaps figure out the language and let me know if you want, but I would think, not to put everything in the kitchen sink in this email or in this letter. I do think that having a focused approach of the speeding and the roads in town, but certainly a mention of 255 and concern of speeding in our community. I could see that adding that there, wouldn't be a harm to adding that. And based on the community comment we heard tonight, people would like to see that. So that would be my suggestion, to at least add a sentence regarding speeding on 255, and perhaps then that lends itself to speeding on our local streets. So that would be my comment. Dave, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, just concur quickly with you, Meg. And then also, I thought the presentation a few months ago kind of alleviated all of our concerns with the closing, with the plan as it was laid out, in terms of, basically 2 short periods overnight. So that's not anything that I'm particularly concerned about. So yeah.
Agreed.
I'm guessing what Dendra was referring to there, because I initially had the same thought as you, Dave, but I'm thinking that she's probably referring to there will be some reduction in lanes during that period of time for when they actually do this overpass project. I don't know exactly how they're going to do it. They're not going to stop the 101, but they are, I'm assuming, going to have to potentially reduce lanes one way or the other at some point, which would give people a bigger incentive to potentially take our route. So it could increase traffic, but I don't know to what extent that would be, but I'm assuming that's what Dendra was talking about. Cause yeah, like you said, it's definitely not going to all get routed through Manila by any means.
Yeah, it's my understanding the short duration of time for the couple of days with the southbound lane being the closure, and that traffic coming through here for those times. So
that's in regards to the bridge. See, because there's the bridge shift that they're going to actually direct traffic through Manila regarding the bridge shift project. But there's also the overpass project, which is a separate project that'll take a long time. They're not going to close the 101, but I don't know if it will affect the traffic flows on the 101.
Agreed.
So it's a separate project.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. And I am familiar now that you mention it regarding the overpass, and I think that would be good to kind of definitely reasonable concerns and things that we should be informed of when they get closer to fruition. I would imagine Chris will be bringing that to the board to discuss in more detail. And should we have concerns or comments, perhaps Caltrans would join us to talk about that effort as well. Did you need any further direction, Chris, to wrap up this letter? Or do you have any questions for us?
I think it sounds pretty straightforward. I was just going to add a little more language up here where it says Manila's bisected by 255. They do already patrol it, and I'll just thank them for increasing their presence there as well. Okay. And then I'll leave it at that.
That sounds good. So I think, on this, looking for a motion to approve the letter with the additions that Chris discussed.
I motion to approve the letter as amended with the 255 language and submit it.
Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. And if there's no discussion on the motion, we can take a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 4-1. Next, for items 5, 6, and 7, these are items that are on the consent calendar. Items that are placed on the consent calendar are typically considered routine in nature and can be approved under in one motion. I will go through the items on the consent calendar and see if there are any members of the public or any board members who want to pull the item for separate consideration. If there are none, it'll remain on the consent calendar. For number 5, approved draft minutes of the regular meeting of December 21st, 2021. Was there any board members or members of the public that would like a discussion on this item? Seeing none, that number 5 will remain on the consent calendar. Number 6, receive the check register. Are there any board members or members of the public who would like to speak on this item? Seeing none, item number 6 will remain on the consent calendar. And item number 7, receive county treasury statements. Is there any members of the board or public members who'd like to speak on this item? Seeing none, item number 7 will remain on the consent calendar. And so with that, if there's a board member who'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar, we could approve 5, 6, and 7 at one time.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second that motion.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say no. Motion carries 4-1. And with that, it looks like we're now getting to the public input section on the agenda. Typically, we see this a little bit earlier. This section of the meeting is for the public to make comment on items that do not appear on the agenda. Items that are not on the agenda, we cannot take action on this evening, but you're allowed 3 minutes to bring up anything that may not have been agendized this evening. Is there any members of the public who would like to speak on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment period for items not on the agenda and move to reports. So number 8 is the director or committee reports. Are there any director or committee reports to share this month? None from me. All right, seeing none, we'll stay tuned on future reporting regarding committee reports, and then we'll move to number 9, the general manager report with miscellaneous updates, and I'll go to Chris for that.
I always forget to unmute myself. I won't take too much of your time. In fact, I'll blow through this thing straight to the only item that I really wanted to bring up, and that was you probably, if you're a ratepayer here, you got a letter from us. And I think I also sent an email to follow up with everybody in case somebody accosts you on the street of why you got some letter. We've got a lot of calls of people that didn't understand that we were just letting them know that the state has lifted the shut-off moratoriums and late fee moratoriums, and we're trying to get people to pay up before we credit their account with state funds. We're seeing a huge influx of money already of people just trying to come around and pay their bill off. So I don't know if anybody's come to any of you guys individually as board members in that sense, but it seems like it's calming down already, and we don't really have a tremendous amount of shutoffs today. But there's new rules in how we do that. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up that that letter did go out. We did start to spend some money on the roads. I don't know if anybody's noticed going back down our street towards the office and Park Street. We bought some gravel, and we got 2 guys with tractors that are trying to fix that up a bit. So we'll keep throwing some road base at that and see if we can't fix that up a bit. That's really the beginning and the end of my report for this month. We might have a lot more exciting stuff coming in March as we see more things come around. So if anybody has any questions, I'm here.
Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick on the gravel. One of my neighbors also did. He bought, like $500. And, he had a thing in Curtis, if you know Curtis and Billy. So, and they laid some out. But any additional help with Park would be greatly appreciated. As from a number of residents.
Yeah, no problem. We hadn't bought gravel or road base in probably at least 2 years. So we've loaded up on that, and we'll do another round of it as much as we can until that tsunami comes and sweeps it all away. Oh, briefly, if I can just circle back on that. I didn't try to be flippant about tsunamis, by the way. Jay was talking about those power lines, the big stanchions that PG&E has out in the dunes. Real quick, I was part of what PG&E was telling the board at the time was that those would withstand a 9.0 magnitude earthquake, but the wires themselves could snap off and fall on the ground. And whether they're de-energized or not, they have what's called step potential, where they hold power for like a battery. So you don't want to get anywhere near those wires on the ground, even if they're disconnected. So that's all.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And I will open it for public comment. Dunder, I see you have your hand up. Please limit yourself to 3 minutes and
Okay.
have your time.
I just wanted to ask Chris if he remembers, did they say stay 50 feet away from those big ones if they fall? Do you remember that?
I believe
Chris?
it was something like that. And I believe that was the buffer that Jay had on his map, that wide berth of going through those.
Because that's one of them's right, where some of those evacuation routes are.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of experience with that other than what they had said. And I believe that you just don't want to get near them. If the ground's wet, I think that would change a lot of the dynamics of that as well. But if you see lines on the ground, you certainly want to stay away from them.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Dendra. And thank you, Chris, for answering that question. And, put out in a recommendation. I don't know how difficult or hard this is, but, there is the event coming up on the 19th at 9:30 in March, the drill, and which I imagine we'll be bringing back in February and to our February and March meetings as at least a reminder to community members. And perhaps if there's time to coordinate or ask PG&E some of those questions, for clarity, as it came up a lot this evening, that when the drill is occurring in March, keeping that in mind and how, thinking about navigating that circumstance or what you'd have to do. Not that you need to bring those recommendations, but just as far as if PG&E has a minimum stay back rule, that would be good to know, that kind of thing. So any information gathering you might do there would be appreciated. Thank you very much. And with that, are there any other questions or issues to discuss with Chris this evening from the board members? If not, I think that concludes our meeting, our January 18th, 2022 meeting, and we are adjourned at 8:23. Thank you all, and see you next month.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a good evening.